Hi there and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video we're going to break down my process of creating a lo-fi track from start to finish. So let's jump right into it. So here's a little sample of the song we're breaking down today. It's called Refuge. It is available to stream if you're interested. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. Alright, so let's start with that rhythm guitar part. So it's essentially in 1, 6, 4, 5 in C major. So I use this chart all the time when I'm writing music because essentially you have your major keys and your minor keys. So in the key of C major, these tell you all the notes that are in the key and whether the chord is going to be minor or major. So I also use a circle of fifths when I want to do some kind of modulation outside of the key. So pretty much the keys that are closer together are going to be more similar. So C and G are very similar keys because they have C, D, E, F, G, and A. And G has, G, A, B, C, D, and they share E minor. So I use that when I want to move around to different keys, but using something like this, if you've never had before, will be very helpful. So when it comes to building the chord, especially in lo-fi, you're going to want to use your chord extensions. And this is what's going to add color. It's going to add that vibe feel to it. Before I start adding the extensions, I usually start with shell chords. And if you don't know what shell chords are, check out my last video. I go in depth explaining them. Essentially what these are just lighter versions of chords containing only the 1, the 3rd, and the 7. So this pretty much is where I started with this song. Is I knew I wanted to be a 1, 6, 4, 5. So there's the major 7 on the 1, the minor 7 on the 6, the major 7 on the 4, and the dominant 7 on the 5. So after finding my general structure of the song through the shell chords, then I start doing what's called embellishments. And these are like hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides. This is where the creativity really starts to pick up. I also experiment a lot with rhythm and different, strumming patterns or finger picking patterns. And I started off with just this groove on C. I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. So then I experimented with this hammer on. And I like to strum with my fingers, do a little. That just adds a little more character to your playing. So once I found that, I know I'm going to A minor, and this is where I start like playing around with different notes and see what I like. And this right here, the A minor 11, stood out to me, so I kept it. So the line went. Then I know I got to go down to the F major 7, just finger picking. And then I know I got to go up to the dominant 7 here. So I can do that. I could do that. Or what I opted to go for was this right here. And this took a little bit. It was trial and error. I'm just listening and playing around, experimenting. Doing this process, don't be afraid to hit a wrong note. Like, yeah, that doesn't sound right, but maybe it could. It's all about experiment, trial and error, and you'll get there. You'll find it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the effect chain going on here. So this is what it sounds like dry coming into my DAW here. And I'm setting a little bit to a long reverb and a little bit to a short reverb, which I have down here. So here's a long reverb, and there's a short one. This is just Valhalla Vintage, and then the other one's Valhalla Room. And then after that, I put on a compressor. This is just a peak compressor, barely touching the surface. These are just grabbing the peaks and squashing them just a tad, and even a little turn down on the wet dry. Then I come in a little more aggressively with the glue compressor. This just gives it some more lift and some more cohesion there. Then I come in with RC20 because it is lo-fi, and you are going to need that lo-fi sound, and this is the best way to get there. I like the sad piano preset, and you can play around with, you know, different amounts of wobble. I try to be careful with the magnetic and the digital and the noise because I do add noise later on in a noise track, but I did leave it on here. And then you can adjust your wetness. So this is where it gets aggressive. I do a hard low cut and I do a large cut on the high end here. And by itself, it sounds kind of weird, but in the mix, it makes sense. Here I got an effect rack. This is just a little decapitator. Give it more color, a little more distortion and saturation. Now I got a sidechain compressing on the kick. So this is just making a duck from the kick every time it hits. And then I usually add soothe at the end. This is just kind of a way to mellow out some of the harshness. So next I'll go over the groove. This is the kick pattern. This is just a kick from Splice. Nothing really special to it. I kind of rounded it out with an EQ. Again, got Soothe on there. Other than that, nothing really special is going on. Next, we'll add the snare. Let's see what the snare is. Again, round it out. I think I added some snare buzz preset on the RC20. And again with Soothe. So let's talk about the hats. These are actually mostly just loops I grabbed from Splice and I kind of chopped up to fit the rhythm I wanted. So let's turn on this first one, see how it sounds. Yep, so that's just a loop from Splice I cut up and turned it into that. And on top of that, I added a hat roll. Oh, I know, a second hat here. And that one's just doing that, those together. And then right here, I added a hat roll and you can hear it. And then next, there's a third one doing its thing. And the last thing I added was a hat loop that I reversed. That's very quiet. Let's listen to it solo. So I just added this reverse loop just to give it some texture. So I like this method of stacking different hat grooves. It really can come together quite well if you do it correctly. So after that, I just added some Foley. I did a water drop, and I didn't really place it. I kind of just placed it somewhere. No particular reason. It just sounded good in that spot. And then I added just some, I think it's, yeah, just some random sounds. This is just adding texture to the groove. So I took all those, I put it into a drum bus, and then I put a little OTT and just touched it very low here. Right, so with the bass, I'm pretty much just following the root notes of the chords, but I'm playing a lot of passing notes, which means, you know, I'm kind of walking down to the next note, or I'll play octaves, or sometimes I'll try to go for the fifth. But just different little tricks like that can spice up your bass line. And the most important thing is to play off of the kick drum. So make sure when you're playing, you're listening to the kick drum and you're following the groove to your beat. So let's listen how the bass sounds here. So I run it through Amplitude here. I'm just using a basic bass preset. And then same thing with the peak compression, just touching the top of it, taking just very little out of it. And then I'm coming in with the side chain with the kick. And then I'm using a little sausage fattener just to give it some more saturation and some color. And then glue compressor, doing a little bit of work there. And then the EQ, I'm pretty much, toning down this peak here, and I'm taking out a lot of the low mids to get rid of the mud. And I'm rolling off the top, and then just adding a soothe, the demudding the bass preset. All right, and here is what it sounds like with the drums and the guitar. All right, next let's take a listen to the pad that I made. It's just an Analog Lab 5 preset called Calm Down. Here are the notes as playing. I just EQ'd it there, and then I also sidechained it with the kick. So next thing I added was just a little synth, counter melody kind of accent type thing. This was the Delated preset on Analog Labs. Again, EQ'd, RC20, a little OTT, and a sidechain, and this is what this is. All right, next let's talk lead guitars. So this is the first lead I added. Just a little glue compressor, again with the decapitator, a little micro shift this time. Rolled off the low end pretty hard, and then soothe. All right, so for the second lead guitar, it's kind of doing a counter melody to the first one. The same effect rack setup, except this time I have a delay that is automated to turn on right on this tail here to provide kind of an echo effect. And let's hear how that sounds. All right, so next let's talk about the noise I added underneath the track. I pretty much added just a forest noise and a rain noise. And it's just adding that, that kind of crispy, sparkly top end that lo-fi tracks mostly always have. But there's not much more to it than that. I kind of rolled off the low end so it wouldn't get too muddy. All right, so that's pretty much the main part of my song. The next thing I did was I copy and pasted it out, and then I start thinking about, arrangement and composition. What part should be, have more energy? What part should have less energy? And I start thinking about transitions and build-ups and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and dive into my actual track, and I can kind of show you how I take this loop and build it out into a full track that makes sense and that's, has a full composition behind it. All right, so here's the original project. Let's take a look at the arrangement. So I have a little starting point here. And I'll show you that on the master track, I should have automated something. Yeah, I automated an auto filter just to open up on the master. And that kind of just leads it into the intro. And I also added this reverse guitar. Yeah, so that's just a guitar in reverse, and I think I actually automated its pitch. So I did a little pitch automation to see how it starts minus 28 semitones and just kind of bends upwards. It's a cool little trick, and it's a nice way to start a song. All right, and this goes into a very low energy part. And sorry, my tracks aren't named because this is my original song and I never do that. This is the lead guitar. I added a crash, just a little crash cymbal here. It was actually a ride. I got my Foley going. my Foley going. Have that pad. And here's the risers. So I was talking about transitions. This is what I'm talking about. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 2 risers and then 4 kind of impacts going out of it. So here's the 2 risers going up. Then I kind of have this like laser, I don't know what it's called. Twinkles. I just have a ping pong delay on that. Just a smooth transition into it. This is the main groove we just went over. And that goes into a breakdown. And then I just added this piano part here as variety. This is how it's mixed. It's just contact 7. Ooh, my computer did not like that. It's una corda. And yeah, that's it. More risers. I added that roll, that hi-hat roll somewhere. Right in here. Oh yeah, so that's pretty much my whole track. I have an outro going out as well. And that's just a little guitar lick I added there. I have no idea which one it is. I think it's this right here. I just have this little melody going into the outro. And these are just the chords and the lead guitar now. And then it's just the chords at the end. And then I think it just goes out on a strum. Just this last strum at the end. So there were some executive decisions I had to make. So I didn't put any lead guitar in the first drop. That's just all rhythm. And I did that because I wanted the second time it came up to have more of a punch to it. So yeah, I don't know if that was the right call or not, but I seem to like it, and it makes you want to listen to all the way through. So that's pretty much the entire song. It's called Refuge, and if you want to go stream it, you can go find it on Spotify. My name's Joshua DeLima if you want to search it. And as promised at the beginning of this video, I do want to show you how I made the album art and a little video animation to go along with the song. I won't go into too much detail to keep this video short, but I do think it's pretty cool, and maybe in the future I'll make another video going into more depth on how I did this. So here's a little animation that I made. I downloaded a free tool called Blender. It's a 3D animation software complete suite. It's not an easy software to learn, just let me warn you. I did have to watch several hours of tutorials to be able to do this. Alright, so when you open up Blender, this is kind of what the project looks like. You kind of set your scene in 3D, and then you kind of set your camera here. And then you can look at the view through your camera, and then you can export your video or your footage. And you can animate your camera to go around. And I also animated the colors to spin around the color wheel. I didn't make these models myself. I use this website called TurboSquid, and I just looked up Fender Strat and I sorted by free. And I was able to find this one, and I downloaded it, installed it into my project. And I did the same thing with my amp. And here's a sneak peek at my next animation for my next lo-fi song that's coming out. It's just a lighthouse that I animated, some smoke coming out of a chimney. If you're interested in these projects and you want to see them when they get released, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope you all learned something useful. If there's something you want me to cover in my next video, a topic that you're interested in, or you want me to dive deeper in, leave a comment below. Other than that, I hope you all have a great day, and peace out.